Well, welcome to the Real Journeys of Success podcast. Yes, you're with your host, Rob Elliott, and we have a guest all the way from the UK. He's from Leeds. These days, he's a business mentor and coach. He's been an entrepreneur. He's made the mistakes, made the money, earned the t-shirt, done it all, and now he helps other people do what he did and be a total success. Welcome to the show, Phil Fraser. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for the big build up there, Rob.
Oh, mate, you can slip me a couple of pounds later and maybe a pint of Guinness if you like.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So, yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Mate, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at you. You look like you're similar vintage to me, but so that means that you started school when there was a little bit of a what you call chalk and a bit of chalkboard, and that was about it. Where did you grow up, mate, and what was it like?
So I grew up in Leeds, which for anybody in Australia is in the north of England.
Yep.
Was at the time when I was at school, had been a sort of Victorian mill town, was very well known for tailoring and fabric and stuff like that.
Yep.
And as most northern cities in the 70s, was going through a bit of a dip.
Yep.
Nowadays, it's a booming financial centre, but back in the school days, it was a bit. We have a phrase over here. It's grim up north. It was a little bit.
So, what was school life like?
School was pretty regular, actually. I was at school. I was fairly smart, so I was always in the top set. I was thinking about this the other day. Actually, I sort of went through school and university without sort of touching the sides. There weren't any sort of major problems. There weren't any issues. It was. My family, my father was a university professor.
Yep.
And ended up as vice chancellor. My mother was a teacher and ended up as a head teacher. So school, A levels, university was, that was what was expected, and that was sort of what I delivered, despite some of my worst efforts.
So I suppose as long as you followed Leeds United, you were safe to go home every night.
Something like that, yeah. Something like that, yeah.
What did you study at uni?
So I went to university in Leicester, which is sort of central England, and did politics because I found politics of interest. I mean, I wasn't going out there and demonstrating and waving banners and stuff, but I was interested in politics. So, and one of the reasons I did that was it kept my options open because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So what was your first job when you got out of uni?
So I got out of uni, as I say, no idea what I wanted to do. Actually, what I did want to do was play football for Leeds United. But that was never going to happen. The scouts just missed me. It was just, missed opportunity for the club, I think.
Mate, they've never been the same since.
Yeah, nothing to do with my ability. So I ended to sort of finish university with no idea what I wanted to do. And my parents said, why don't you become an accountant? Because that's a good job, which it is. And they lined me up an interview with a friend of theirs who ran an accountancy firm, and I got a job as a trainee accountant, which I absolutely hated.
I can relate to that.
And to make things really worse, another guy started on the same day as me, who was also called Phil, who was sort of nailed on 100% accountant, and as far as I'm aware, is still an accountant today.
Oh, no.
So we had this comparison of, this Phil, has done this brilliantly. This Phil hasn't. So when I went into handing my notice after a year, the boss said, "Do you know what, Phil? I think you've made the right decision."
You know what? I've interviewed people all over the world now for the last over 12 months since COVID started. And you're about the third person to say the same thing. They've gone into their boss after their first job and went, "Mate, great decision."
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it was very helpful because it gave me a basics of, at the time, old accountants will remember things like double entry bookkeeping.
Yes.
So it gave me an understanding of P&L and costs and expenses, and still not exactly 100% sure on balance sheets, but it gave me a very, very good financial base, which obviously in years to come was useful.
I did accountancy like you. I was told you had to do something. And I remember doing the accounting exam and I sucked. And I got to the balance sheet and I looked at it and it didn't balance. So I rubbed it out and wrote the same on both sides, hoping that I had it right. And the guy would just look down there. Yeah, nah.
Yeah, no, that's not going to work.
So I was reading a little bit, like I do all my guests. I stalk them and see within. You don't own a Ferrari, you don't drink almond milk cafe lattes, and you don't have a ponytail. So how did you survive being in marketing, and how did you get there?
So as a failed trainee accountant in Leeds, I went. And again, looking back, this is a bit weird. I went down to London because quite a lot of my friends were down in London, and got a job selling advertising space over the phone. Now at school, I was sort of one of the shyest kids in the class. So I have no idea, not even now, understand why I went into sales. But I got the hang of it. So I spent. I was selling advertising over the phone in trade magazines. I then ended up selling consumer mags, advertising in consumer mags. In between some of the jobs, I ended up with, I think, 4 different jobs in different magazines. In between, I got a job as a recruitment consultant, because I went to the recruitment consultancy and said, I've had enough of this job. Can you find me another one? And they said, why don't you come and be a recruitment consultant with us? And, when you're 24, 25, you go, yeah, all right, I'll give that a go.
Yeah.
Did that for a year, which again, and one of the things I do nowadays, I go into schools and talk about careers and career paths and how, when you're 16 and people say, right, what do you want to do? I haven't got a clue what I want to do. So actually I go into schools and say, look, what you want to do now is irrelevant to what you probably end up doing. And my career path went all over the place.
Yeah.
And what I tell them is I picked up a different skill in each of these different jobs I did. So obviously in selling, wonderful skill to pick up if you're doing anything commercial. As a recruitment consultant, it gave me a really good skill in sort of understanding people, and somebody sits down in front of you and within 5 minutes you go, right, I've got you nailed. I know who you are, I know your strengths, I know your weaknesses. And again, further down the line, when you get into recruitment, recruiting your own staff, you get to that point. Somebody walks in the office for an interview, you go sort of yes, no, that sort of thing.
Straight up.
So I did a year as a recruitment consultant. Went back into selling advertising and met a girl in London. Didn't want to live in London as a family, so moved back up to Leeds. And to do that, I got a job with Yellow Pages. I don't know if you guys over there got Yellow Pages.
We had Yellow Pages here for a long time.
Yeah. That was the worst job. I hated that job more than accountancy, because when you're selling sort of what I'd call regular advertising into magazines, it's it's quite professional and commercial and all that sort of thing. Yellow Pages, I'm going out on building sites and sitting on upturned milk crates trying to sell some guy a little ad, and he's lugging bricks around, and I'm going to see a plumber who's halfway scaffolding, doing some jobs. It was just deathly horrible. Absolutely hated it, to the point where I performed so badly I got the sack. And then I told you it was a long winding story. I then ended up again back selling advertising space for a guy up in Leeds who I don't know if you get these door drop magazines, these sort of lifestyle magazines.
No, we don't.
Anyway, so it's a lifestyle magazine. It's sort of local shops and places like that. And the way this guy worked was he'd sell people the ads and then go back to them and say, we could do your leaflets and we could do your business cards and we could do your brochures and all that sort of thing. So it was sort of pseudo advertising. So I worked with him for a year. He was a brilliant salesperson and had no organizational skills.
Like
so
most
I was
salespeople.
So I was his account manager. He'd come back from meeting somebody, go, right, we've got this fantastic deal with somebody. And I go, well, have you got any copy? Have you got any creative? No. When's it going live? It's going live tomorrow. Well, so I was the one who carried all the shit for him. And that job managed to get me a job in an advertising agency.
Yeah.
Where I stayed for 6 years, and that was an absolutely wonderful place. Culturally, absolutely brilliant. I took so much from that place to my business, and that was the longest I was ever employed in a proper job. I don't count running my own business as a proper job.
Yeah.
So I spent six and a half years there, and so we're now getting to the end of 98, 99, and we were getting clients coming to see us to say, we want one of these newfangled websites that we've heard all about.
Yeah.
So one of the directors sort of approached me and said, right, I want you to head up what you'd now call a digital division. And it was, in those days, it was sort of make it up as you go along. So I headed up our digital division, but having been in the ad agency for 6-7 years, I'd got to the point where I wanted to be the decision maker. Because with advertising, you take some ideas into a client and you go, you can have this one or this one or this one, and they decide. Yeah. So as a supplier, it's just like, I'd like to be the decision maker now. So I said, right, I want to go client side, and I've heard this digital internet thing seems to be going quite well. There might be some future in this.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get a job in online. So I ended up with a sports betting company called William Hill, who I think have been in Australia. I'm not sure if they are a big sports betting company.
Yes.
And I was employed to launch their first ever online casino, which I did. And that, if I stop there, because that's my career path until I launch my business. So if you stop there, that's a good stop point.
So what was the catalog? I read about you. You say that you created a business from the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Selling it many years later. What was the catalyst for you to do it? I mean, I guess it was an online bingo, which is cool, but the business decision behind it, how did you make it and say, I'm putting everything on the line, I'm going to do this?
Okay.
And what was the challenges you had as you started?
Okay. So this is now stage 2. So that's my employment history that we've just done.
Yep.
Right. So while I was at William Hill, we came across online bingo as the next thing that was going to be in the online sector. So I was asked by the board to do a presentation to them about, should we get into it? Is it worth doing? They decided no. The end of the year, since the end of 2000, I left William Hill and started doing some consultancy work in online gaming.
Yep.
And somebody approached me and said, I'd like to get into this sector. What do you recommend? So I said, you want to get into online bingo? That's going to be the next big thing. And then about 24 hours later, I sort of sat there and thought, if I'm recommending to somebody else to do this, why I do it? I should listen to myself.
You should.
So I not always, not listening to myself always. So I sort of dusted off this presentation I'd done to the board, rehashed it, and changed it to be a business plan for what would have been the UK's first ever pay-to-play online bingo site.
Yep.
Now it was in the market in the US already, but it hadn't come to the UK yet. So I took it out to the market for angel investment. Mm-hmm. Over here we call it Dragon's Den, you call it Shark Tank.
Yep.
Sort of real life Shark Tank. And I bombed completely. Nobody was interested. Nothing happened for various reasons. And we were, timing was wrong. The market was wrong. .com bubble was just bursting, all that sort of thing. But what I'd done is I'd built a very, very basic website, which listed all the existing US bingo sites in there. There's like a review, sort of wasn't even a review site. But on it, I put a very basic questionnaire, pop-up questionnaire, to ask the traffic that came across the site, age, sex, demographics, spending patterns, frequency, all that sort of stuff. So that when I did my pitch, I sounded like I knew what I was talking about in terms of the market. But what happened was some of the American sites that were listed on that website started approaching me and saying, we'd like to advertise on your website. Okay. Send me some money and I'll work out how to put an ad on a website. And that was how the business started, totally and utterly by accident. And so if you imagine this time, so I've done this sort of pitch to lots of people nobody wants to fund me. I've got a few $100s dripping in from the US. Got a young family. I was at the time still looking for a proper job. And I landed a very nice job in a digital agency, account director, car, salary, the whole shebang. And then went in on the Friday before the Monday I was due to start and said, I can't take this job because I've got this thing.
I've got to do it.
That might happen. I've got to do it. And I say to people now, regularly say to people, you've got to follow your gut. Because if you don't follow your gut, you'll always think, shit, what if I'd done that?
Yeah.
And if you do follow your gut and it doesn't work out, hey, you tried it.
Yeah.
So that was my huge sliding doors moment. That was the point where I thought, I'm going to go for it. And I could have taken that job. It's a very nice job, very nice salary, and left the website, and it would have never happened. And that's. Sorry, I was going to say that's at times looking back at that, that's really scary, because I think what would have happened if I hadn't done that. How
did you fund it?
It was, well, we were quite lucky at the time. So I was, as I said, I was doing some consultancy work.
Yeah.
So that was bringing some money in. I was doing some presentation skills training, which I'd learned at the advertising agency. So so that was funding a bit of stuff. My wife was doing part-time teaching.
Yep.
So we had enough to sort of keep us, we had enough to put food on the table. And we were fortunate in that it gave us enough runway and leeway to create something that we wanted to create that then had some value, rather than just chasing the buck straight away.
Yep.
We had, so the money, and we were fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, in the fact that the market was growing.
Yeah.
So we rode the wave as the American market boomed. Inevitably more clients came online because there were more brands out there. So it got to a point, I think, it took us 5 years to get any staff. We had 5 years with just freelancers. But about maybe a couple of years into it, I decided actually working on this website was less hard work and more fun and more valuable than doing proper work as a consultant.
Yeah.
And it was a sort of a scales thing, and that's how it happened. So it was right place at right time, an accident, making the right call, and we grew it slowly. As I say, we had freelancers for 5 years, so it's from home.
Yeah.
And then the next big step point was when one of our freelancers said, I'm not doing freelance anymore, I'm getting a proper job. So we thought, so you get to, in business, there's lots of stick or twist points.
Yeah.
So this was a stick or twist point. So we thought, shit, what do we do? And at the time, our local council was doing some free business support. So we got a business advisor in.
Yeah.
It was the first time we'd shown our business to anybody as a proper business. This was just, we got to the point where, we managed to upgrade the car, and we'd had a couple of holidays, and it was, you go through, it's sort of Maslow's hierarchy. But this was the first time we'd shown it to somebody as a proper business. So it was a little bit like, you're a proper businessman. Here, what do you think? A bit scared of what he said. And he said, you've got a really good business here, go for it. And a piece of advice he gave us was, because we said, okay, we're going to get some staff. And he said, actually, and I remember at the time, taking on staff was one of the scariest things I've ever done. But he said, actually, when you take on a member of staff, you're actually only in for a month's salary. In the first 2 years, depending on your contracts, an employee is going to be on a month's notice either way.
Yeah.
So actually, if you give somebody a salary of $24,000, you're only in for the next month.
Yeah.
If it really doesn't work out, you go, right, here's $2,000. I'm really sorry. It goes. So that took some of the fear out of it. So we got an office at the end of our road. Fortunately, we got an office locally, and we employed 2 members of staff, because we thought one member of staff might be a bit weird, sort of husband and wife and 1 member of staff. It's just a bit, just a bit like, oh, this is a bit odd. So we got 2.
Yeah.
And it grew from there. And every time we took on another member of staff, our revenue went up, because you have more capacity.
Yeah.
and you can do more stuff. And as a founder of a business, you start by doing everything yourself. Then you sort of slice bits of you off. So we got an account manager, and we got a web developer, and then we got a salesperson and another project manager. And each time you do that, your capacity increases as a business, and you as a business owner. And again, this is more looking back than at the time. You do more of the business owner stuff you should be doing. The bigger picture stuff, the strategic stuff, the thinking stuff, rather than the shit. I've got to sell an ad tomorrow because we haven't got any money.
So I remember my father giving me a comment after we'd sold one of our businesses, and I'm going to tell you what it is after I ask you this question. When did you know it was time to sell?
Right, that's a really good question, because sort of fast forward, let's think about this. This would have been 2009, 2010, so sort of 10 years into it. The business was doing quite well, and this isn't meant to sound arrogant, but I'd got bored.
Yeah.
I sometimes compare it to spinning plates. You spin this plate, and then when you stand back and all the plates are spinning, you go. And particularly as an entrepreneur, the excitement is the growth and the idea and all that sort of stuff. And when it's just a regular business that's running and making money, you think, this is a bit boring, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we decided to sell because I was bored. But what we'd done is we'd always had a sort of plan B was, okay, if we don't sell, we'll get somebody else in to run it for us.
Yeah.
And what happened was we put it on the market. We got to the point where we got an offer on the table, which was okay. It wasn't brilliant, but it was okay. And at the last minute, we decided not to sell. And then we brought in a COO, and that again transformed the business. But all the way, so that was the first sort of thought about selling. But all the way through, and from quite early on, I'd always been of the mindset, if somebody gives me enough money, I'm happy to sell. I know a lot of people get very, very tight into this is my baby and I can't let it go. And I wasn't like that. I was very, if you give us enough money, we'll sell. And when we eventually came to sell, that was what happened. Somebody put enough money on the table for us to go, yeah, okay.
So I'll tell you what my old man said to me after we sold 2 businesses. I should have sold years ago.
Yeah. A lot of people say that.
I think a lot of business people don't realize that once you get bored in a business, you're actually hurting the business.
Yeah.
And Dad was a proud man and brilliant at what he did. But when he looked back, he went, should have got out here or should have got out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, hindsight is 20/20, but it's interesting when they look back. So now you're doing quite the opposite. You're now helping people get the most out of their business using all your experience.
Yeah.
We're now coming into a world that's totally different. We're coming out of COVID. We're getting there. Yep. Business has changed. Digital, AI, everything is really starting to have more of an impact. The traditional businesses, in many cases, either have to pivot or die. Yep. When people are coming to you and using you as a sounding board for their business, what are you seeing as being the big challenges they're now facing as they look forward to go, hey, well, what are we going to do now? How are we going to survive? Or we're going so well, how do I keep it going? Because there are businesses out there that have done incredibly well out of COVID. So what are they saying to you, and where do you see their challenges lie?
I think you're right. We're coming to the end of the sort of first chapter, I suppose you'd call it.
You're right.
And I think during COVID, I think people, it was dump the long-term plan. It's like, how do we survive next month?
Correct.
And those people who were nimble and were quick and were smart have done very, very well.
Yes.
Not just because when lockdown first happened, we were getting food deliveries from a woman who owned a cafe in the city centre because she had stock. So we had loads of cheese and wine and all that sort of stuff. And she was almost doing it door to door.
Cheese and wine.
Well, what more do you need? What more do you need? So there were, a lot of people. You could call it pivot, you could call it just reacted, whatever it is. Yeah. And we've got I know a local business had a big taxi firm, who serviced all the airports.
Yeah.
So obviously he was just dead in the water. He now does food delivery. So he's got all these cars. He's now delivering top quality food. He's got another business out the back of it. I was talking to a woman who runs events. She said last year was her best year ever because she went digital.
Yeah.
So I think we're through that, and conversely, there are people who had businesses who have just either haven't got the wherewithal or the brains, or the inspiration, or even just the I'm just so knackered, I really can't do it. Who've just sort of held their hands up and given up.
They burned out.
And some people do that. But I think now the question, you're absolutely right. The question, I think we're almost going back to what you would do as a normal business. It was, okay, what's our 12-month plan? Now, this year's 12-month plan will look very different to the 12-month plan you wrote 24 months ago.
Hell yeah.
But you still, all the basics are still there. You've still got to do the same stuff. You've still got to do marketing. You've still got to have a strategy. You've still got to hire the right people. You've still got to put out a good product. You've still got to have, good operations, good customer service. All the basics are still the same.
Yeah.
But just what you're playing with might be very, very different. And, even things, one of the most obvious things is, okay, do we keep the office?
True.
Yeah, very, very simple. 24 months ago, when you do your business plan, one of the lines in the plan wasn't, what do we do with the office? What do we do with the office? It would be, are we going to repaint or not? That was the question. That was, or do we replace some chairs? Whereas now, businesses have got to sit down and go, okay, what's the best way of going forward? Now, I'm old school. I love having an office. I think the direct interaction with people, you can't replicate on things like Zoom. However, what we found is, in most cases, people can do their work and can be trusted to do their work wherever and subject to timeframes whenever it suits.
Yeah.
So if Rob, if you're my employee, I say you've got 10 tasks to do by Friday. I don't care if you do them all 1 minute to midnight on Friday, or you do them all on Monday and take the rest of the week off. As long as you do them, that's fine. And I think that's one of the issues that business is going to do. How does our business operate? What we do and what we sell and how we market it is probably going to be exactly the same. The operational thing is probably going to be a key one.
I was reading an article about admin versus creatives in a business. So the admin people who do the accountants do the stuff that has to be done, they can do it remote.
Yep.
But creatives are struggling because they work best when they're getting in front of other people physically.
Yeah.
And it's their oxygen.
Yeah.
Marketing, the product development, the sales guys need oxygen, and oxygen is getting in a room where they said the new offices, if you've got 100 people on staff, you have 50 desks, because you're never going to get 100 people in at the same time anymore. But at the same time, they have to allocate more like events to bring people into the office to make it work. So someone said to me, and this is probably some things people say to you, a design of an office is going to change. How we work in an office is going to change. Hot desks, yes, but in a very, very different way. They're more like hot lounges, someone said. Where they walk in with their laptops and sit around with a cup of coffee and discuss a product launch or discuss where they're going to go. If someone is setting up a new business and they say, okay, where do I concentrate my efforts on? Is it digital? Is it process? Is it sales? Or is it product? What do you say to them now?
I think the first question is obviously it depends what they're doing, depends what they're offering.
Yeah, just in general.
I think, as I say, the business basics are still the same. If you've got a product, it has to be a good product. If you've got a service, it has to be a good service. I think if you've still got to market it, you've still got to sell. We were talking earlier, you're a salesperson.
Yeah.
Next year, selling is going to be exactly the same as selling was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's about relationships and connecting with people. I was trained as a salesperson to do features and benefits. How does
Sorry.
That's how old I am. That's how old
I was taught the same. Don't worry.
Yeah. So Dipper and AIDA and all that sort of stuff. So all the basics are the same.
Yeah.
It's probably operational that is probably the key difference. So how do you create it, do it, build it. Do you know?
Yeah.
I talked about, it took us 5 years to get an office.
Yeah.
And that was an inevitable, part of the growth of a business. You become a grown-up business when you have an office. It's part of,
Not anymore.
It's sort of, but yeah, correct. Absolutely. Now, if I was back there doing that, what I was doing now, I wouldn't have had that trigger to say, right, we get an office. We'd just carry on. We'd just take more freelancers. Now, whether culturally that creates a strong enough business to develop all the things that, as you said, the oxygen of creativity and ideas and bouncing things around, and the Americans call it the water cooler moments. It's walking past somebody's desk and saying, hey Rob, did you see that thing in the paper yesterday about, and then that makes you trigger something. You think, oh, actually, we could, and then you bounce it off somebody else. Yeah. That doesn't. You could have a Zoom meeting, but you just don't get that spark stuff that you said. And I think your point's very, very, very good, actually. If you split it between operational and creative, and operational being admin and systems and process stuff, that can all be done anywhere. I mean, we had a freelance bookkeeper, and she came in to the office once a week, just to pick up bits of paper because we were still a bit old school. But she did most of the work she did at home. What's the biggest? Lots of jobs can do that.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge people have come to you in the last 12 months? I mean, you're a sounding board. You're known as a sounding board. You've been there, done that. You've made just about every mistake someone made, and you've also done the opposite. You've made some absolutely amazing choices. What is it they come with you that's been the most common concern or worry?
Let me think. I don't want to sound boring, but it is just the usual stuff. It is. I mean, one of the things that is one of the things that's wonderful about running your own business is you can do whatever you want. You've got nobody to tell you what to do. The downside of it is you've got nobody saying to you, "Hey, Rob, did you do that?" Because you're the boss. You go, "No, I don't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. I went play golf instead." So actually, one of the roles of a sounding board is actually an accountability partner.
Yes.
We have a meeting and the client says, I'm thinking of doing A, B, and C. You go, right, okay, next time we meet, I'll talk to you about A, B, and C. And just the nature of having somebody there saying, Rob, did you do that? Makes you do it. It's so basic, so basic. But then you've also got that whole thing of when you're the boss, you're expected to know all the answers.
Yes.
The team come to you and go, hey, Rob, we've got this problem. What do you think we should do?
And no one does.
No one does. You make it up as you go along. The classic imposter syndrome. It's like, I hope nobody finds, and I had this for years, I hope nobody finds out I'm just making this up as I go along. And I can do that. And you can do it with a business owner without them feeling guilty or negative or weak. Yeah. They can say, Phil, I'm really stuck here. What do you think I should do? And what I will do with them is I'll say, okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And I don't give them answers. They come up with the answers, but just that verbalizing and stuff. So okay, what are the options? So we'll talk through 3 options. As you're talking through something out loud, you're going, blah 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 blah. That's shit, isn't it? And I've not said anything. And the beauty of doing that, and then I'm going, well, actually, the other option is we could do blah 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 blah, and they go, yeah, that's much better, isn't it? And I go, okay. And I'll spend an hour with a client and they'll talk and I'll have said 3 things and I'll go, Phil, that was so helpful. That's really brilliant. But it's all, it's accountability. This is why I use the phrase sounding board. There's, thousands of people out there claim to be business coaches.
Yeah.
They've either read a book or bought a franchise or whatever it is. Yeah. And I don't want to sort of fish in that pond. And I think as a sounding board, it allows me to do some mentoring. It allows me to do some coaching. It allows me to not, one of the issues with business coaching is, if you think about it, as a business owner, most business owners have a bit of an ego. They're, a bit alpha male or alpha female, whatever you want to call it. And for them to hold their hand up and say, I don't know the answer, I need some help. That's a really, really big step.
Oh, isn't it?
So actually just saying, look, I'm a sounding board. I'm just here just to listen and bounce things around with you. I think helps people get over that hurdle of not having to say, I don't know the answer, but just say, I know the answer honestly, but I just can I just check it with you? It's it's slightly less scary.
Mate, that's true. Before we've got a couple more questions before we wind up. If someone came to you and they've said, "Look, I've sold my business. I've got cash. I've owned my house." Where would you say would be a good business or a good niche to buy into coming out of COVID that you think is going to be full of opportunity for people?
Oh, dearie me. That's a good question.
I love to ask questions that people don't see coming.
Where would I put
gut, as you would say to me?
Where would I put my money? Where would I put my money? I tell you what I would do.
Yeah.
And this is something I've been interested in since I sold, is actually the whole concept of M&A, of buying lots of small businesses, putting them together and making a big business.
Yeah.
If you can identify a market that's really, really fragmented,
yeah,
but that there are lots and lots of synergies between the same units,
yeah,
that would be what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
Because there's also naturally you buy smaller businesses at a lower multiple, you put them all together, you have a bigger business, you get a bigger multiple. So it actually has a growth part to it. So that's probably what I would do. So it'd be, and particularly a market that is naturally growing. I mean, one of the benefits we had with being in online bingo, it was a growth market. So we didn't have to be brilliant to grow. We just had to ride the wave.
You just had to be there.
You had to be right place at the right time. If I had lots and lots and lots of money, I'd be buying petrol stations or gas stations and turning them into electronic charging stations. That's what I'd do, because that's the way we're going. But that's going to cost a lot of money to do that. I haven't got that much money.
I think maybe hydrogen might kill that off completely. The new hydrogen technology. Someone actually said to me the other day that electricity and electric cars are really just the in between to what may happen in the future.
Right. Okay.
If you're looking back at yourself now, and
I'll scrub that idea.
Hey, it's just someone's opinion. It doesn't mean they're right. If you run into your 19-year-old self staggering out of one of the many pubs around Leeds, and he looks up and says, "Phil, I know you. I don't know how. What advice would you give your 19-year-old self now, looking back?"
Well, I've listened to a few of your podcasts, so I've been thinking about this one, and I'm assuming I can't do the scene from Back to the Future where Biff from the future gives all the sports results to his. I can't do that one.
You can't get out of it that easy, mate.
I can't do that. I would say don't. And I think somebody else said this on one of your podcasts. Don't be afraid of failure, and don't be afraid of what people think. And I say this to a lot of clients now. Just JFDI. Just fucking do it. And I think if I'd give, and that would translate to a 19-year-old me to say, go and ask that girl to dance.
Yeah,
that's how it translated then. It wouldn't translate to anything business at the time.
Someone said to me, "I can't sell," and I said to them, "So what are you doing on a Friday night when you're down the pub looking at that good-looking girl?" And they go, "I go and say good day." I said, "So what are you doing? You're selling yourself, aren't you?" And Absolutely, they give you that look. Yeah. Mate, if the big fella gave you a call and said, "Tomorrow night, I'm ringing your bell and you're getting on the one-way escalator up to heaven," what would be the last drink you bought?
It would have to
alcoholic, be... non-alcoholic, it doesn't matter.
No, it would have to be a pint of Tetley's, the best bitter in Britain.
I love it. Mate, you've been absolutely awesome. How do people get in touch with you, and how do they read up on where you're doing and what you're doing?
Okay, so best place to get me is usually LinkedIn. Yep. So just I'm on LinkedIn most days, so Phil Fraser. You can get me on my website, which is www.philfraser.co.uk.
Yep.
Don't go to philfraser.com, because that's a medieval reenactment costume company. So if you see lots of pictures of Robin Hood and things like that, that ain't the right place. All my contact details are on there.
Yep.
Happy to chat to anybody about anything. I love talking to people about their businesses, and if there's any way I can help, happy to do so.
Mate, it's been a pleasure talking to you from Leeds. I hope you guys over there get safe quick. I know you got some challenges ahead of you, but I'm sure you'll come out of it nice and well. And then the English will come out here and lose the cricket in our summer. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Inevitable.
Mate, thank you so much. And as we say to everyone on our podcast, have a groovy day.
Have a groovy day.